Once upon a time, in a sprawling metropolis brimming with contrast, gleaming skyscrapers and quiet alleyways, fragrant bakeries and rusted fire escapes, there lived a 17-year-old girl named Lila Monroe. She was an orphan, selling lottery tickets from a wooden box strapped to her chest, stationed on the busy corner of Grand and Maple. Her routine was as predictable as the sunrise. Braid her hair, pull on her faded yellow hoodie, slip on worn sneakers, and head into the city, clutching her box of tickets and dreams. Lila had been orphaned for nearly a decade. Her mother passed away from an illness when Lila was just 7, and her father, a mechanic who loved jazz and peanut brittle, died in a factory fire 2 years later. Since then, she had bounced between foster homes and shelters, never truly feeling at home anywhere. Now she lived in a modest community shelter, where she shared a room with 3 other girls, each with their own burdens. Despite her hardships, Lila carried an unwavering belief in hope, education, and the kindness of strangers. Her greatest dream was to become a teacher, an educator who could inspire children not to give up, no matter how broken their beginnings. She believed that knowledge was the only thing no one could take from her, and she saved every cent toward her dream. On a gloomy Wednesday afternoon, as dark clouds gathered above the city and the wind carried a hint of rain, Lila sought shelter beneath a coffee shop awning. She shivered, rubbing her hands together. That's when she saw it, a glimmer of gold near the storm drain, half submerged in rainwater. She knelt down, brushing the object free of leaves and debris. It was a wristwatch, but not just any wristwatch. The timepiece was exquisite, crafted in rose gold, with fine engravings along the rim and a leather strap that still looked fresh despite the damp. The brand read, "Wartime Luxure," an elite brand she had only seen once in a glossy magazine in a hair salon. Its face sparkled even under the gray sky, and the hands ticked forward with calm elegance. Her heart pounded. A watch like this could be worth thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. She could sell it. It could pay for food, rent, even college. The temptation flickered, but then she remembered her father's words, spoken long ago while fixing a broken radio. "Lila, you can lose everything in life, your house, your money, your job. But your name? That's yours to keep clean." Lila wrapped the watch carefully in a napkin and brought it to the local precinct. The police officer on duty looked at the watch with raised eyebrows. "You're telling me you just found this?" She nodded. "Yes, sir, near the storm drain. I thought maybe someone dropped it." He chuckled, not unkindly. "This isn't a wristwatch, sweetheart. This is a Wartime Luxure Premier. Costs more than my car." He took her statement, filed a report, and promised to try and locate the owner. She walked home in the rain, her heart heavy, yet clean. She did the right thing, she told herself. That mattered. The weeks that followed were ordinary. Lila continued her daily routine, but her mind often wandered to the watch. Did the owner claim it? Did anyone appreciate her honesty? Then, one brisk morning, as she served tickets to a man in a trench coat, a limousine rolled up across the street. A tall man stepped out, dressed in a black suit and tie with a leather folder tucked under one arm. He approached her with poise. "Miss Lila Monroe?" She stiffened. "Yes? My name is Harold Verns. I work for Mr. Alistair Crane. He wishes to see you." Her breath caught. Alistair Crane, the elusive billionaire who had built a luxury empire and vanished from the public eye over a decade ago. What would he want with her? Harold handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a note written in fine cursive. "Lila Monroe, I owe you a conversation." See. She hesitated but agreed to go. The next afternoon she sat in the back seat of the limousine, dressed in a modest blue dress provided by Verns. The ride took them beyond the city's edge, to a quiet estate surrounded by pine trees and thick hedges. The mansion, though vast, was not garish. Its walls were lined with bookshelves, and classical music drifted from a nearby room. A man stood by the fireplace, his silver hair combed back, and his expression unreadable. "Lila Monroe," he said, turning. "You returned my watch." She nodded. "Yes, sir. I found it near a coffee shop. I wasn't sure what to do, but—" "You did exactly what you should have done," he interrupted gently. "Do you know how many people would have pawned it and vanished?" She looked down. "It crossed my mind." He smiled faintly. "Good. Honesty doesn't mean you don't struggle. It means you choose to be better, despite the struggle." He walked to a drawer and pulled out the same gold watch. This piece was given to me by my wife before she passed. I deliberately dropped it as a test. I wanted to see if the world still had people worth believing in." Lila gasped. "And now," he said, "I want to invest in that belief. I'd like to offer you a full scholarship to any university, anywhere. Tuition, housing, books, all paid. And if you're willing, a mentorship at my education foundation." Tears streamed down Lila's face. She tried to speak, but her voice failed her. She simply nodded. Over the next 4 years, Lila studied at Oxford University. She traveled, researched, published articles, and built a reputation for her ideas on education reform. During summers, she interned at the Crane Foundation, working on programs for underprivileged youth. By 24, she was the youngest program director in the foundation's history. She launched the Second Watch initiative, offering scholarships and mentorship to young people who displayed courage and integrity in quiet ways. In time, Lila became a speaker at global education conferences. Her TED Talk, "The Watch Beneath the Storm Drain," went viral, inspiring millions. She often ended her speeches with the same line: "Integrity isn't about the grand gestures. It's about what you choose to do when no one's watching." Alistair Crane, though now retired, would often attend her speeches, always seated in the front row, the gold watch gleaming under the lights. Lila's life had changed, yes. But the truth was, she had always been the person she became, resilient, kind, principled. The world had simply caught up to see it. And so, the girl who once sold tickets under gray skies became a name etched in gold, not for wealth, but for the values that outshine it. 3 years had passed since Lila Monroe became the youngest director of the Crane Educational Foundation. During that time, her work had transformed from managing scholarship logistics to designing educational policies, meeting world leaders, and advocating for structural reform. But while her public life blossomed, her private life remained quiet and grounded. Lila continued living simply, choosing a modest apartment in the heart of the city over a luxury condo. She still rode the subway, still donated half her salary to student aid, and still sent letters every month to children in shelters across the country. She hadn't forgotten who she was or where she came from. But challenges began to emerge. When the Crane Foundation proposed a partnership with the Ministry of Education in her home country, critics in Parliament protested. "What does a former orphan girl know about national policy?" one senator scoffed on live television. "We need scholars, not sentiment." The remark cut deep. Lila had always believed in merit, and now she would have to prove hers again. Instead of retaliating, she launched a pilot program titled From the Ground Up. The program embedded new teaching models into 50 of the country's poorest public schools. It offered teacher training, updated technology, and, most importantly, mental health support for both students and staff. The results were staggering. Dropout rates fell. Literacy scores improved. Parents became more involved. The press had no choice but to cover the success, and even Lila's fiercest opponents had to concede. She was doing something right. She was invited to speak before Parliament. Her voice calm but resolute, she said, "I do not stand before you with a PhD, but I do stand with the stories of 10,000 children. Children who, like me, are not statistics, but potential. What they need isn't just funding, they need faith." Applause echoed across the room. A week later, the Parliament passed the Monroe Education Reform Act, naming it in her honor. The bill provided funding for 200 new schools, the expansion of mental health services, and nationwide teacher pay raises. But with success came new burdens. As her influence grew, so did attention. Journalists dug into her past, trying to find dirt. Old photos of her selling lottery tickets, sharing a cot in a shelter, and even crying alone in a church pew were splashed across gossip sites. One tabloid ran the headline, "Street girl now power broker, but is she ready?" It was Alistair Crane, now in his late 70s, who invited her to his home that evening. "Do you remember what I told you when we met?" he asked. "Yes," Lila replied. "You wanted to see if people were still worth believing in. Now it's your turn to ask the same question. You believe in these kids, but can you still believe in yourself now that the world is watching?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, even more now." He handed her a folder. Inside was a proposal. His final bequest. Alistair Crane was retiring completely and naming her as his successor, not only at the foundation, but also as chairwoman of the newly created Crane Global Education Network, overseeing programs in 19 countries. She cried in his study that night, silent, overwhelmed, grateful. Her first act as chairwoman was to establish the Gold Standard Fellowship, an annual award for educators who went above and beyond. She insisted the first recipient be a woman named Mrs. Karina Hollis, her elementary school teacher from years ago, who had once given Lila a used backpack with a handwritten note inside, "I believe in you." The ceremony brought the world to tears. Photos of Mrs. Hollis hugging her grown-up student became a symbol of how compassion could shape destiny. Years passed. Lila never married, though she had many companions and admirers. She once said in an interview, "I'm already in love," with the idea that every child deserves a chance. She adopted 3 children from war-torn regions, raised them with care, and gave them the same hope she once found in a rainy city under a billboard. When Alistair Crane passed away at age 88, his obituary read, "A legacy built in gold and passed on to something greater." His golden watch was buried with him, by Lila's request, because, she said, it served its purpose. At 42, Lila Monroe received the World Peace Education Medal. At 50, she published a memoir titled, "The Watch I Didn't Keep." At 60, she stepped down from leadership and took up teaching again, this time in a village school in Morocco, where no one knew her name. When she passed away quietly in her sleep at 83, surrounded by family, friends, and former students, the world mourned. But her legacy lived on, in every classroom funded, every scholarship given, and every child who was told, "You matter." And so, the orphan girl who once returned a golden watch became not just a symbol of honesty, but a light for generations.